Hey guys, Dante here and welcome back to my channel, The Burgos Art. And welcome back to another edition of Quick Vids, where I show you how to make something cool in a short amount of time. So, recently I've been getting back into D&D, or at least trying to. I like Dungeons and Dragons kind of more for the imaginative world building and crafting part, perhaps more than the actual gameplay at times. With that being said, today we're going to be focusing on making terrain. Now, if you don't like Dungeons and Dragons, that's perfectly fine. But this project is going to help you make terrain and miniatures primarily that are kid-friendly. So what I mean by it is this. Normally, anyone who does miniatures, especially castles and broken towers and old Renaissance-looking stuff, might be familiar with tools such as this, which is a hot wire cutter, a handheld hot wire cutter, for objects such as this kind of foam and insulation foam. Now, those are kind of standards. If you're going to make a castle, the best way to do it is to cut foam bricks with a hot wire cutter and some pink or blue or green or whatever insulation foam and start building it from scratch. But that's not really a good hands-on approach for those who might want to do projects with their younger ones, or for those, for example, who don't really have access to the construction-based insulation foam. They can't get a wire cutter. They have no space in their house for a wire cutter table, etc. Other people might also use this material. This is corkboard. This actually has a nice texture to it, so you could cut into this as well. But when you cut into these, you have to use usually box cutters, something a bit more aggressive than a pair of scissors. So these are also not the best thing to use when you're working with children. So today's project is making a tower, a castle, a building of sorts that has brick, that can be used in a tabletop game, that can be used as a miniature, but using tools and objects you can have in hand when working with young individuals. So first things first, we're going to establish our base. And our base is going to be this can, this Pringles can, the distant cousin of the Monopoly Man. So the Pringles can is, I think, a nice way to start off because anyone can get one of these. You can buy them in the store, literally eat, finish it up, and then use this cardboard material. It's lightweight, it's simple. This particular one, in fact, is the medium size, I believe. And this is going to act as our tower. Essentially, it's going to be, if you're following Warhammer or Dungeons and Dragons scale, like a one-story tall, lookout tower. We're going to be using this. On the table here are the materials we're going to be using to turn this can into something cool. So right here I have a piece of craft foam. This is literally maybe 2 centimeters, 2 millimeters or 1 millimeter thick. We have our measuring tools, which are going to be a standard ruler, and in this case a tape cloth measurer, since we are using a rounded object. Types of glue, such as tacky glue and or the stick glue. A pair of cutting utensils, in this case scissors, so we are trying to avoid box cutters and X-Acto knives. And for a bit of flair, I picked up this Crayola air dry foam. Once again, objects you can all pick up at the store. And some of you might be wondering why I'm not using this. Now, this spray-on foam, once again, is great for projects dealing with miniatures, but it is dangerous and in an enclosed area, and you wouldn't let your 10-year-old use this. So we're not going to be using this today. We're going to be using just these. So now that we have it set up, now that we know what we're doing, let's jump into it, shall we? Alright, so first things first, we need to find out some measurements on something such as this. I'm going to save you the headache and tell you right off the bat, these cans are roughly 9¼ inches around, and counting from the metal rim to let's put it upside down, the metal rim to the top of this silver rim, they have 4½ inches. For those of you who don't like use inches, that is, let me see, that is 23½ centimeters around, 11½ centimeters up and down. We are going to be cutting bricks of 2 centimeters by 1½ centimeters in scale. We're doing that because I want to leave enough gap between the bricks. We are basically going to cut the bricks and glue them onto this with gap in between to indicate the kind of mortar that you have on the inside. So I did the math for you on that, so don't worry about trying to calculate because it's a headache. So you start off with, of course, measurements of the can, which I've done for you, measurements of this cloth, which you could, not even cloth, this foam, which you could pick up at arts and craft stores, which I've already also done. So we're going to go ahead, cut these out and glue them on one by one. I know what you're thinking, it's a tedious job doing it one by one, but then again, if you're doing high-end materials such as the insulation foam, you would also be cutting the bricks and gluing those together one by one. So let's get cutting, then we'll glue it on, and then we get to the next step. Okay, so we've gone and cut up all of our foam squares, or rectangles actually, and they're not all even, which is perfect because we don't want them to look even. We want them to be a little messed up, a little jagged. And if you wanted to, you could also go back and just trim little edges. Cut the edges off to make it more of a rounded brick texture if you really want to go for those fine details. Because one of the problems with craft foam is unless you use a tool such as a Dremel, you can't really texture them that well, at least not at this stage, unlike, once again, the other types of foam. So right now, shaping is your real bet of how to get the kind of details you want until you get to the later stages, which we'll touch on in a bit. Right now, we're going to stick these guys onto this guy. I'm using, once again, a basic water type Elmer's glue. In fact, it's the Elmer's stick glue, and it's kind of cool. This one is purple and dries clear, so you know when it's ready. With this can being made of paper and this foam being made of foam, this glue is actually perfect. You just go up and down, and then attach the foam pieces one by one. And they do stick very well. The main thing is, when you are attaching these foam pieces, much like if you were attaching, once again, a brick onto a larger structure, when you do the top layers, above each other, you want to offset them by half, like that. Just keep adding layer, layer, layer. Get the shapes just right, put a little gap in between them. If it's a little messy and uneven, that just adds to the character. And then after that, we're going to paint this with a particular material that's going to help it all stay right in place. Now keep in note, with the measurements I gave you, you should have 11 bricks going all around the edge, and then you're going to have 7 bricks going all the way up. So make sure you space yourself just right, and because you're using a simple water-based glue, you have a minute or two, a few minutes in fact, to really move them around and get them right where you want them. And if they're not happy with the way they are, you can always peel them off. And if you're not happy with this type of glue, you can always use a more tacky glue, which is more of a painted on kind of texture, as opposed to just rubbing it on with one of these. Either way, you still get the same effect. Just make sure you're always pressing them down and work semi-quick. You don't want to wait too long because then the tackiness fades away. You have enough time to move them around, but don't get lazy. Keep moving. Here's a little tip. If you find that your flat bricks are beginning to lift off of your rounded structure, a nice thing to do is to add the glue either directly to the brick or to the structure like I mentioned earlier, and give that craft foam a little pinch. Just pinch it inward. It ain't gonna damage it, but that pinch forces it to kind of grab onto the curve of your structure, and it'll glue nicely. Now as you notice, I did this, as I said, upside down with the bottom of this Pringles can on the top. That's because I'm going to go ahead and add these right here. I just went ahead, traced a circle using the can, and cut strips. These are going to mimic brown wooden planks, which will then be placed right on top. And much like with the brick, I'm cutting them at a off-kilter size. That way there's gaps between the actual planks. Finally, once these are glued on, we're going to take our craft foam and make little bricks. But these are actually three-dimensional now. The measurements I gave for this allow for 11 bricks around the entire tube. So to kind of round it downward, I made 5 bricks. Half of 11, half of 10, get it? And these are going to be placed on the can as little archery points. Then we're going to let the whole thing sit for like an hour or so, let it dry. I believe the craft foam says to let it sit for like 24 hours, but after an hour, it already begins to shrink. In fact, it might shrink a little bit and then pop off. Once it's dried, just glue them right back on. Just give them time to fully air dry before you get to priming and painting steps we're going to go to right now. Once we get through the cool of time-lapse effect. Woo. So, time has passed. Now I've gone ahead and coated our tower in this black paint mixture. Now this is a mixture of Mod Podge, some people call it decoupage, and just black acrylic paint. In my case, I actually added a little bit of black airbrush paint because it's more water soluble. But essentially this is just water-based glue and black paint. Now for those who are used to priming things with spray paint, such as with peel coat or some really heavy duty spray paint primer, you'll know that if you spray that in a small area, you'll pass out within a few minutes. But this water-based paint and water-based glue is perfect for our project right here for a more, once again, kid-friendly approach. This technique I learned, by the way, from, I believe it is called Dark Magic Craft or Black Magic Craft. If I get it incorrect, let's put the name of this wonderful YouTube channel right about here. There we go. Check out this YouTube channel after this video, of course, if you're looking for more in-depth and kind of semi-high-end versions of what we're doing here. Once again, with objects that you would normally get from various art stores, hardware stores, and of course, things that are more for older crafters. But right now, working with the kid-friendly stuff. So, there's a mixture of my paint and glue. I did a quick paint over of our tower, and I decided, you know what? Let's add some texture. Now there's tons of ways to add texture. In this case, I literally just went and took a bunch of our play foam, made little round balls, and I squeezed them all on, and while this was still kind of drying, I just dropped them right onto it. So it's going to have these spotted little square pieces and round pieces. So this is a good way to add quick texture. Another way is if you have glitter. I kid you not. A non-fine glitter, something a bit more chunky. Sprinkle that on and then add another coat, which is what I'm going to do. And that will solidify all of it. So it's not just these sleek foam cubes that we now have on it, but these little bit of bumps and stuff, bumps and grooves and whatnot, to give it more of a pop. Heck, if you're looking to be even cheaper, you can take your tacky glue and just go ahead and just do little random dabs all around it. Nothing that will bead off of it like a water droplet, but just something that will stick. Tacky glue is great for that. Something that will add a weird little bump, and you want to add it to all of the rectangles without getting it in between the rectangles, because the idea is that this is the stone that's textured, not the mortar inside of it. And I'm literally just doing this. Right now they're just dots, little polka dots. And you'll go in and just smear them around. Like that way they're no longer just spots, but like actual like weird little grooves and semi-fingerprints. You don't want to make it too much like actual fingerprint, but just go nuts. Try different techniques. All these different ideas. I'm just drawing at the wall right now, drawing it into this project to show you all the different ways you can approach it. Tacky glue is great because it smears, but it still sticks. Regular Elmer's glue will just run off, so it might not be the best idea. I am also taking some of the glue and just doing streaks in the same direction as my wooden planks. Just like that. Once again, quick, simple way to add silly little texture here and there. Be loose and smear it around. Multiple techniques on one project. And there you go. So, once again, we're going to do a little bit of a time lapse. We're going to let all this dry. We're going to let the foam dry, let the glue dry, then we're going to hit it with another coat right now, just to have it all get sealed in nice and tight. This is, it's loose material. It's kind of liquidy because it is just water-based glue. So really get your brush, something soft, something feathery, and get inside all of the details. Get inside the cracks of the stone, coat it all in black, and then after that, we're gonna go into our painting phase. So once again, quick, time jump. Okay everyone, here is our now dried, primed tower. You might notice I also added an extra strip of foam around the top, which I really think kind of brings the whole thing together. I'm not sure if I'll make this wood or if I'll make this stone, but either way I think it works very nice. And now that it's all solid black, you can see all the little added details, the nubs, these streaks of extra glue kind of blend together quite nicely. So for this, I'm going to be using a simple grade mixture made with really cheap Craft Smart paint. It's an acrylic paint. You can use any paint you want, really. I'm going to take this and use a dry brush technique. If you're not familiar with that, that's where you take the little bit of paint, wipe off most of it, and then do light streaking just to kind of catch these details that pop outward. Once the gray dries, I'm then going to add some of this. This is a mixture of white and a very watered down gold, so it comes off kind of like this eggshell color. That will be the final coat to make the dark tones, mid tones, and upper tones. And then with that, we'll also be adding a wash to once again seep into the details. Luckily, we added black already, so the wash we don't have to go too crazy with. So take some of this off and just lightly go up and down and just kind of catch some of the details. You're not trying to get it into all of the crevices, just the parts that stick out. And it's okay if the painting doesn't come out exactly the way you want it. It's acrylic paint. You can always go back, repaint it, completely cover it with black wash, whatever you like. Oh, see? There's a bit too much right there. So I'll just wipe off my brush, do that. Then I can always add more black later on to really fix that. Again, you want to wipe it off. If the planks are going this way, I'm going up and down, kind of against the planks themselves. Hopefully you can see the detail on that. You can see the smears of glue I left and how they add a kind of wood grain to this foam, because once again this foam doesn't really take much detail unless you use a hot wire cutter, and we didn't want to use that. So that looks very nice. Add some brown into this strip so it's actually a wooden frame on top, rather than have it blend into the stone bricks. So give it a second to dry, and in just a second, because it is acrylic, then I'm going to take some really, really watered down black and do a wash again to make sure it all sinks in. And I know it sounds counterproductive to do the highlights like this, then add a wash, which will then darken them. But it's okay to go back and forth. That wash is going to sink back into all the small details, really fill it up. And then that's why I'll pull out my even lighter, more eggshell color and do a second pass of dry brushing to have it stand out. So let this dry for a minute, and then we'll do a simple water wash. Now, some people have particular formulas they use for their water washes. Let me actually pour some water out first. I am quite literally just gonna water down some paint. That's it, just gonna water it down. Some people use soap. Some people buy a wash from certain places that have certain chemical reactions and whatnot. I'm just gonna add some water and some paint until I get a consistency I'm happy with. And in case anyone's wondering, once again, you can always find, of course, non-toxic paint in your local art store. Because if you are doing this project with the little ones, the last thing you want to do is have them eat the paint. Because we all know they try sometimes. I'm going to go ahead and add an extra layer of protection for the tabletop here, because watered down water-based paint, of course, is going to go everywhere. So once again, up and down, get it soaked, let it seep in there. Don't be afraid of losing any kind of details, because once again, you're going to go back in there with the lighter tones to make the details stand out a second time. Let it drip, let it dry, and then the final coat comes next. Okay, so with the wash finally cleared up and dried, we're going to go once again to my eggshell color for the stone, and I decided to go with this particular tone of cadmium yellow, even though it looks more orange, to give the wood a bit of a highlight. But let's do the stone first. That should do it. We now have our tower. Say that 5 times fast. Our tower. I especially like how the wood planks on the top came out. Simple, it's lightweight. And the cool thing about using a Pringles can, it sits at exactly 3 inches by 3 inches. Which means you could take a miniature. Let's see, what kind of miniature do we have on us right now? Let's use this standard resin cast of a Dungeons & Dragons base, which is of course 1 inch, as you can see, 1 inch. So, the 1 inch figurine, you can take this, and because this is a 3 inch standing structure, you can quite literally put him right in the center of those 3 by 3 squares and have it as a one-man tower. Technically, you have enough space to put 2 of these on it, if you don't mind the fudging the spacing on the board. But ideally, one person is a lookout tower. It's hollow, lightweight, so when your character walks up to it, or when any character walks up to it, you can say, okay, John the Barbarian walks up to the tower. John, what do you want to do? And John says, I wish to climb the tower and sit on top. Or you could say, John walks up to a tower and finds himself trapped inside. John is trapped inside. And on top of the tower, Jack the Archer appears. You must defeat Jack the Archer to free Tom inside. Other things you could do with this, details you could put down, such as a simple door. Once again, using the wood pattern we used on top, you could cut a simple door that's about 1.5 inches high and just have it take up the space of the squares in the front. You could probably even cut a hole inside, but once again, be careful with the material you're using because it is all paper and cardboard, so cutting holes in it might disrupt the structure. Practice, experiment, do as you wish. Projects like this are meant to have fun, are meant to be there to enjoy. So there you go, guys. One easy to make, family-friendly, kid-friendly tabletop piece. You can use it for miniatures in your games. You can use it for Dungeons & Dragons. You can use it for board games. You can use it just to make a giant playset for your kids. And your kids will enjoy getting their own hands dirty with it. You can also do square towers using milk cartons. You could do walls using buckets. You can in fact do a giant castle using plastic buckets with similar ideas. Get experimental. And that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys stay tuned for future videos. And once again, I am Dante. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the future. Later.
If you liked this video, be sure to check out my other works on my YouTube channel, and also be sure to follow me on these social media websites, linked in the description down below.